Knockdown rule is in effect. I'm Steve Kim, joined by Viva Mario Lopez. What a weekend in Las Vegas.
No Cinco de Mario. I guess it's over.
Last week.
I'm Sexto. Am I Sexto tomorrow?
Yeah.
It's right here. But our guy on the ones and twos, of course, Justin Buffalo Knuckles.
What's up, guys?
Our Piñata.
Our Tony Weeks, the
Tony
third
Weeks.
man in the ring. And speaking of which, we've got so much to talk about. We begin round number one. Canelo Alvarez adds to his cadre of belts. The IBF middleweight title is under his waist now as he wins a clear-cut 12-round decision over Daniel Jacobs. Alvarez is now 52-1-2. Your scores 115-113 twice and 116-112. Mario, I actually watched the fight twice, once on Press Row, once on The Zone last night. I'll be honest, I think the judges were actually very charitable. I thought Alvarez won this fight wider.
I was surprised by the scorecards. I agree with you. I had it 8-4. Could have easily been 9-3.
Agreed.
9-3. And I think maybe I felt guilty or biased and in judging. So I thought, okay, maybe 8 rounds to 4. But easily 9-3. And in watching it again, I was like being too hard on myself.
Yeah.
Listen, okay, it wasn't one of Canelo's most entertaining fights overall. However, I thought it was still a good fight because it was very tactical. It was chess in there. His defense has gotten so good. It improves every fight. And the way he bobs and weaves at the waist, it's very Chavez Sr.-esque. And even some of the slip movements, I mean, he was looking like Mayweather in there at some points. There was somebody put a little clip on Twitter and Instagram, I think. He missed a 10-punch combination. Literally, slip, bob, weaved all of them. It was pretty thing to look at. I mean, it was a beautiful thing to look at. And I don't know why he doesn't get a much more credit than he deserves just defensively. Jacobs, unfortunately, it's weird because he always has a history of starting off slow. And it always
in his big fights.
In his big fights. He comes on strong and he has moments, but he takes too many lulls in between fights. When he caught Canelo with that big left hook, but he walked right through that. It was too little and not
way too late,
not often enough. And it's like it's almost frustrating to watch because you see this big guy who failed to make the weight,
the second day weight
again, and which cost him. Now, what was the actual figure? Was it 250,000 a pound, or 100,000 a pound?
Well, I've heard different numbers.
Regardless, it was a large sum that I'm sure he could use right about now, especially coming out, taking this L. But it was very frustrating to watch, and so it's like, wow, what's with the mindset? That's what I think the biggest difference is, aside from the talent, is Canelo's confidence. He's such a confident guy. He is so calm and composed in there, and he really, really executes his game plan well. With Jacobs, it's like he's almost afraid to pull the trigger, and he gets jittery. Yes, and he's unsure himself. And for the bigger guy, because he looked bigger in there, he was backpedaling way too much.
3 years ago, I had Larry Merchant on my other podcast that I was doing, and the word he described,
you were cheating on me,
Canelo,
rat bastard,
was command.
Right.
The guy has command, and he was controlling the center of the ring. A couple things on Jacobs that I noticed. He was trying to steal a lot of rounds. That literally, when the 10-second warning came, you could almost see in his thought process, let my hands go, let me try to steal the rounds. The other thing is, Daniel Jacobs has mastered the art of what I call, or what the gamblers call, the backdoor cover. In other words, a football team is down by 28 points, but in the last 6-7 minutes, they put up a couple garbage touchdowns to cover the spread and give the impression that, hey, a play here, a play there, penalty flag there, we could have been right in the ball game. Nah, I thought the first 8-9 rounds, this fight was in the bag for Canelo Alvarez. He was the commander. He was completely in control.
I agree.
And from a technical standpoint, I'm going to start calling him Ashford and Simpson. He is solid as a rock. And everything that you talked about defensively, then there's one more thing that now he's added to the repertoire that he's mastered, along with all that head movement and elusiveness. When he does get hit, now he rolls with the punches.
Right.
There was a particular left hand, a big one, maybe the best punch that Jacobs landed from the southpaw stance in the 9th round, and it landed, but Canelo mitigated the punch by rolling with it, and I'm like, wow.
And he walked right through that.
Right.
You
this
never
kid
would have
has
been
developed.
He is such a seasoned pro, and I think it's safe to say that he's got the most impressive resume in boxing right now. He really does.
If you go by names, top to bottom,
absolutely.
Number one.
Right. There's no doubt. I think he's the biggest. Well, he's obviously the biggest star in the sport, and I think he's going to remain that way for a while. After that fight, I thought to myself, okay, who could he potentially face next? Now, the biggest fight that could be made business-wise is with Triple G, who coincidentally sat right in front of me on this fight, and he said, and I don't know if he's just trying to, stoke flames and create buzz, but he said it was a boring fight. It was more like a sparring match, which I don't know how he could tell because he wore the darkest glasses right in the middle of the fight. I don't know if he saw shit. He was rocking those shades.
He was like Corey Hart, wore sunglasses at night.
Yeah, I don't know if he saw anything, but
it's
he
a
said
new Golovkin. It's a new Golovkin.
And maybe there's a little fatigue there, but damn, those were good fights, and they kept getting better. And I think that's the best fight that could be made business-wise.
Bottom line, very simple. If you're the zone and you're paying this much money,
right,
and some of these fights are lost leaders, that's the fight they want. Bottom line, because they are in their business of subscriptions and retention.
Right.
I hate to say it for Demetrius Andrade, he doesn't move the needle. Neither does anybody else. Golovkin, Canelo, yes, there is a fatigue, but as I wrote on ESPN on Saturday night, number one, that fight does the most business, and number two, last I checked, wasn't the rematch better than the original and a damn good fight last September?
That's exactly it. Entertainment value is guaranteed. Will Jonathan Banks, his new trainer who was recently announced?
We'll get into that later.
Yeah, will make a difference? I don't know. But I think that's the fight that makes the most sense, obviously, in September. And then Demetrius Andrade, who you mentioned, look, that's a slick, lengthy, lanky southpaw that could be problematic for him. I think it's high risk, low reward. He does talk about wanting to get all the belts. Maybe, I guess, down the line. But I can't think off the top of my head, other than him, Kim, who would give him fits. It seems like he could be on this perch for a while.
Well, maybe at 68, a guy like Callum Smith. But
no. Well, now you're talking about a different weight class.
He's a middleweight.
Look,
he
came in at 159.5. I was right there. He came in under the weight. It looked good. He had no problem. Was talking to him at making the weight. He is a middleweight. And it would look, Bernard Hopkins, who's a big guy, stayed at middleweight his whole career, and that guy could have easily. Well, he eventually later on, but for the prime of his career, he stayed at middleweight. Marvin Hagler. So there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Right. And going back to Danny Jacobs, who once again blew off the second day weigh-in. The first time he did it was an IBF mandated rule that they then got rid of.
For Golovkin, he really ballooned up.
Right. But here's the thing about Jacobs that's puzzling to me. It's obvious that he was trying to game the system and gain a physical advantage, but this weight was not a weapon, it was a shield. Because you don't get bigger to fight smaller. To me, with that added weight, he needed to be on the front foot, needed to try to push Canelo back a little bit.
Right.
But instead,
and you know what? In the moments he had, the few moments he had is when he was in close. So if he would have chose to fight, ironically, he probably would have had more success.
Yeah, he came in more like Pernell Whitaker than marvelous Marvin Hagler, and I believe that, again, he did just enough to have people believing, well, maybe it was close. In my view, it really was not that close. I thought it was much closer to 9-3 than 7-5. And I think Brian Kenny, just go on the broadcast real fast, I kept hearing on the timeline how he was such a Canelo homer. Well, I watched it last night. I thought Kenny had a good night. I thought he called it the way it was.
But you're right in that he does give the impression that it was much closer. Because, by the way, I happened to be at that fight, too. The Golovkin-Jacobs fight, I didn't think that was close.
Yeah, 8-4 with the knockdown.
Right, with the knockdown. And everybody's saying, huh? And he's talking robbery. This, I'm like, am I? It's not, okay, so I'm not crazy.
No.
That's a perfect example, again, with Golovkin. He tried to give that impression, but when you look at it, it really wasn't.
And even some of the rounds that this stated rally of Danny Jacobs between 9, 10, 11, 12, I believe there's a psychology of judging and all of us that score fights. Because a guy does a little bit better in the second half of a fight in terms of the closeness of rounds, sometimes you give that mercy round.
Yeah, you give that benefit of the doubt, but it's unfair.
I see people giving the 8th and the 11th to Jacobs.
Come on.
I thought those rounds were pretty clear that the harder, cleaner punches were landed by Canelo.
Yeah, look, you'd have to be completely just kidding yourself and have an agenda if you want to make an argument that Jacobs won that fight or was in that fight.
Quick question about Canelo. I know he had the sleeve on his left knee. I know that's been an issue. I heard it curtailed his road work a little bit. I wonder, he seemed to have a little less stamina than before. Conditioning didn't seem quite as top-notch as it was when he fought Golovkin the second time. I wonder about the health of that knee in the short term.
Didn't he have surgery or
Last year he did,
Yeah,
yes.
he did, right? Is that the same knee?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and he's a young guy, so that does concern me. A little time off would be nice right now.
Yeah, but again, he says that he will be returning in September, and he'll be meeting with Golden Boy within a couple weeks to make a decision on the immediate future. There's not a lot to talk about the undercard. It was so bad in the beginning, it had me wanting back Butterbean and Mia St. John. But there is a kid that stole the show and made an absolute statement. Now, look, me and you have been riding a shotgun on the Teofimo Lopez Express. I think he's the best prospect in boxing. But in my view, 1A is Vergil Ortiz.
Wow, he was very impressive that night, made quite the statement. Yes, Mauricio Herrera, a little shop worn at that, but nevertheless, the Maestro's a tricky guy,
Never been
crafty
stopped.
in there, never been stopped, and to be taken out like that, ooh, that was a lot of buzz. And Jojo Diaz also looked pretty sharp, So I don't think it was as bad as you think it was. But both those guys I thought needed those performances, and they delivered.
Vergil Ortiz is only 13-0, 13 knockouts. He's only 21 years old.
Wow, he already looks like he could be in the mix in that top tier.
Yeah, and I remember 2 years ago when Joel Diaz, I love that guy, was still training him, and he said, Steve, this is the best prospect I've ever had. He will be a great fighter. And he's with Robert Garcia now. But when you talk to Joel Diaz, even now, he said, Steve, I don't care what happened with our relationship, the fact that I don't train him, that kid's going to be a multi-divisional champion. He'll be one of the elite fighters in the world.
Bold statement.
And the thing that I like about him, he's not just a heavy-handed guy. A lot of those guys are ponderous and slow. You see the punches. With Vergil, he's light on his feet,
right,
fast of hands, and he also set up that right hand by feinting. So there's some boxing IQ there.
Exactly, and he measures distance really well. He gets him right at the end of his punches, too. Who would you like to see him face next?
Not Saddam Ali, who got wrecked by Anthony Young.
Yeah,
I think
how about that?
Yeah,
huh?
that was not really much of an upset, by the way. A lot of insiders like that guy out of Philadelphia. Someone that's going to be durable. How about an Antonio Orozco?
Oh,
experienced guy.
That's a good fight right there.
Yeah.
I don't know if Orozco wants any of that, but yeah, that's a good fight.
But there's no doubt about it. Golden Boy now, they are making Vergil Ortiz move over all the way to the left side. He's on the fast lane. He's going on the Autobahn. I think Ryan Garcia is probably their most marketable young fighter.
Right.
Their best guy with the highest ceiling. There's no doubt. It's this young kid out of Texas.
And I like this kid because he taught himself how to play the piano and play the guitar.
He's very eclectic.
Yeah,
very
he's a little
eclectic
Renaissance
there.
man.
Yes. Mario, it was Saturday Night Fever on ESPN from Stockton, California, from the Stockton Arena. And it was Artur Beterbiev and German Ancajas with dominant performances, retaining their titles. But the guy that really sold all the tickets was this young 19-year-old kid who's 13-0, Gabe Flores, who absolutely iced Eduardo Reis. Mario, we have our next great regional ticket seller.
That was a statement, too.
Wow.
Nice big left hook. And there's always a soft spot in my heart for Stockton because that's where I had the wrestling state championships every year. The Spano Center. No, CIF was local.
Yeah.
But the big state was at the Spano Center. Isn't that in Stockton?
Yeah, there's you talk about the College Pacific?
Yeah,
College
University of Pacific.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly right there. But no, that's great. Listen, anytime you can get a fighter that really gets their community behind them and cultivates this loyal fan base, it's always great for the sport.
Yeah, and he's only 19 years old, and even from 6 months ago, he looks bigger, stronger, and faster. That man strength is starting to come together. One quick note on Artur, the Barbarian Beterbiev. He is an absolute caveman. You might hit him, you might outbox him, but he will club you to death. And to beat Hot Rod Kalage, who's a pretty good fighter.
He's a bludgeon.
I mean, he just bludgeoned him. I mean, look, the thing is, can you outbox Beterbiev? Yes. Can you come down the middle on him? Yes. But can you take him for 36 minutes? It hasn't been proven so far.
You'll know you've been in a fight with that dude.
Yeah. Look, anyone at 175 that's going to face this guy, they're going to have some real issues. Moving on to news and notes, it was unveiled on Saturday morning in a special invite-only press conference at the MGM Grand. Gennady Golovkin to train with Jonathan Banks, former heavyweight, who has experience in the corner of Vladimir Klitschko and Cecilia Breakhouse. This is what Jonathan Banks said in terms of what he thinks Gennady Golovkin is currently missing.
Going back to say what was missing, it would be actually throwing a stone at his old team, and that's not something I do. But what I will say is what most of everyone noticed, there was a lot of sort of inactivity from Triple G. It's not that he was just battered and beaten, but it was his inactivity.
In the ring or
in
not
the
fighting?
ring? No. In the ring, he wasn't as active as most people would normally see him, and that was the difference with. I'm speaking on the fans, so to speak. We all, as we watching the fight, we as fans watching it, and as we seen him fight, we noticed one thing, that he's not as active and throwing punches as he usually throws.
The surprise
You know,
that we had was,
right?
was
So
the lack of body punches.
well, it was just lack of punches. Period. That was one as well, but it was lack of punches. Period. Because as we've seen him previously fight, you know, he would throw different arsenal of punches, and it would be more consistent.
So Mario, Jonathan Banks was kind of a sleeper choice. I wouldn't say one of the brand name trainers. Here's the thing that is interesting to me though. For this particular camp, they are staying in Big Bear.
That none of this makes sense to me. I'll be honest
That's
with
a
you.
little awkward with Abel still
Jonathan Banks is came out. Not that I have anything against the guy, and he did a great job with Klitschko, but I just didn't see that coming. I thought maybe a Buddy McGirt, a Freddie Roach,
Joe Goosen, Robert Garcia.
He would definitely stay in Southern Cali. He lives here. He's he lives in Santa Monica. He's his family here. And much of what we heard was he didn't want to get out of that altitude. Nothing makes sense.
I talked to the lawyer, John Hornauer, and I said, well, okay, here's the thing. Why is he still in Big Bear? He said, Steve, the fight's in 4 or 5 weeks. For this camp, they're at Shane Mosley's compound right now.
Yeah, well, by the way, that's a very, very quaint neighborhood. I'm sure he's going to run into Abel.
Yeah, that's
over breakfast or something.
Yeah.
That's it's just the whole thing's weird.
Right, and Jonathan Banks, it's interesting to me. He says that, look, I'm going to work more mitts. And because I look at Gennady as leaving money on the table. But then I said to Jonathan Banks, and we'll play the soundbite, I said, but Jonathan, he's a 37-year-old fighter. Couldn't that be a function of age? And this was his reply.
It's like tomato. You know, I mean, you can say it's because of age. You could say that, or it's because of lack of something else. But I can't determine that until we get further into the mix and see exactly what it is. It's like, you know, you see somebody limping as they walk. You could say they hurt their foot, but until you get further diagnosis, you find out their hip hurt. That's why they're limping. You know, so it's all about assessing the situation and giving them a proper diagnosis so you can fix the situation.
So Mario, I find this interesting. 37 is 37, and this is a guy that's being drug tested pretty well. So you're not going to have the second half resurgence like a Barry Bonds finding power at age 38, 39. One thing I did notice, and it goes back to my conversation I had with Andy Ruiz about 7-8 months ago. He said he loved training in Big Bear. He loved being around Golovkin and the guys, and he actually liked Abel Sanchez. But he did say, he goes, Steve, here's the problem I had with Abel. He didn't work mitts. He goes, the way I fight, I need to be fluid. I need to have my combinations be in sync.
That's interesting.
No, in fact,
what's the reasoning?
He just doesn't believe in all that stuff. And a lot
you don't have to do Mayweather 20, 30 punch, but there's certain combinations that's interesting.
Right, and the interesting thing about Abel is that he does a lot of the circular pad, where you keep throwing that one punch, and you perfect that one punch. But I did ask Jonathan, I said, Jonathan, if you do that so many times, whether it's the left hook or the right hand, do you kind of get stuck in that rhythm? And he says, yes.
Of course.
Yes. And you've done both, right?
That's why I'm surprised. I'm surprised. Look, he already had the power, too.
Right.
I'm surprised that he wasn't working at least 2, 3, 4 punch combinations. But now that you say it, we haven't been seeing those.
It's been one,
right,
or the 1-2.
Exactly.
But there's been no 1-2 with the cleanup hook.
That's interesting.
So if you train your body to be at a certain rhythm or cadence over months and now years, that's what your body becomes.
Wow.
But the other thing is, like, you know, Gennady's 37, and for some reason, the last week or two, I've been watching a lot of Michael Jordan highlight videos on YouTube. And there's this one guy that does these Michael Jordan cut-ups. Like, this guy must be a fanatic. Like, he does Michael Jordan's greatest reverse layups, Michael Jordan's greatest left-handed dunks. And so he does cut-ups like a Michael Jordan 51-point game in 1992. The one thing that I notice about older fighters or athletes, the Michael Jordan from, like, his rookie year till about 89, 90, a lot of those games, half of those shots are dunks and layups and, like, spectacular stuff.
Right.
But then as he got older and a little bit wiser, more jumpers, more fadeaways, it was more efficient. And I get the sense, and I've thought this for a while, Gennady Golovkin's in the fadeaway jump shot stage of his career.
But he's a guy who's fundamentally sound, where not an example of like Roy Jones, who relied on pure athleticism to do. He is a guy who's fundamental. And his look, what I was surprised, not to go backwards, but with Jacobs is how inefficient his jab was. He wasn't able to land that jab, and it made me appreciate Golovkin's jab, because he was constantly boom, boom, able to time Canelo. even
the distance and spacing, he understood
yes, that's what I'm saying. Even at 37, 36 when he fought him, whatever, it was
Right.
so consistent, and it was such a nice. I was like, wow, seeing the difference back to back. You're like, wow, he's a guy who knows how to fight and is fundamentally sound. So I'm not too worried about the reaction time being a little slowed down. I mean,
because he tucks the chin in. He's not a reflective fighter.
Yeah,
He's
exactly,
not.
and he's got a hell of a chin at that. So I think it'd still be competitive, but again, 37 is 37.
Yeah, and the one thing that Rudy Hernandez, who I believe is one of the masterminds of boxing, he says he looks like Golovkin. He said, Steve, with a guy with that much power, especially when you're facing a slick guy like Canelo who can disappear in front of you,
right?
You've got to aim for the shoulders
or the chest
down and chest down and just hit something and just continue to make contact. Remember that fight? We weren't there, but Rocky Marciano fought a guy by the name of Roland the Stars in one of his title defenses.
Damn, you're going back.
He hit him on the arms so much and so hard. The guy was hospitalized with blood clots.
Well, Roberto
That's how you
Duran,
do
too,
it.
used to just hit you in the body all over the place. Yes.
So
exactly.
it will be interesting to see what Jonathan Banks brings to the table. He's a disciple of Kronk Jim and his mastermind was, of course, Emmanuel Stewart. What type of mood, what type of feeling did you get from Golovkin sitting in front of him?
Well, he's always a genial, jovial guy. He's in a good mood. I was just more like, how can you see anything with the shades? I don't know if maybe he had some sparring and he was covering some stuff up, looking quite fashionable in his pink jacket, but I like Gennady. How can you not?
Right. So, again, June 8th, as he fights Steve Rolls at the Madison Square Garden, it'll be with a new corner man. A couple of other news and notes here. Tony Harrison will be fighting Jermel Charlo in their rematch June 23rd, Las Vegas. The Mandalay Bay, where the Flying Fishes play, as Don King said, that'll be on Fox. Then for the WBO middleweight title, and again, Mario, this is where the timing may not work out here for Demetrius Andrade for Canelo. He fights June 29th against Maciej Sulecki at the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
So again, logistically, that just may not work out.
Yeah, I think it's safe to assume he's not going to be his next opponent.
And also, Teofimo Lopez, speaking of our favorite young prospect, July 19th on ESPN, he'll be taking on Masayoshi Nakatani. Now, this is about placement.
Italian kid.
No, he's Japanese. Bonsai. This is why they're making the fight. This is an IBF eliminator. The winner of this is in line to fight Richard Comey. Now, I heard something on Friday, very interesting, and I'm sick of people saying, well, who was Teofimo Lopez fought? You know what? That's a good point, but here's the thing. I heard Comey turned down over $1 million to face Lopez next.
What does that tell you?
So what does that tell you?
Exactly.
So again, you can only face the guys who are willing to step into the arena. And Mario, you have some interesting news here. You are the newsbreaker here. You're Adam Schefter. I'm hearing Ryan Garcia will be making his return July 13th. Now, I heard that the venue in Carson, the Stub Dignity Help Depot, would be the venue, but you're hearing a more exotic locale for this event.
Well,
maybe.
I don't know about exotic, but definitely local. Speaking with De La Hoya, he's trying to get Ryan's next fight in Pasadena.
In the Rose Bowl.
And not in the Rose Bowl. I'm talking literally in the streets of Pasadena.
Old Town Pasadena.
So, yeah, and essentially shutting it down, putting a ring there. I mean, they know how to do that, right?
Yeah.
They have the biggest parade in the country with the Rose Bowl parade. And they shut down a lot of events, apparently, in that area, in Old Town. But in the summertime, putting barricades, a ring, and
then bleachers.
Bleacher and the whole thing. And there's so many bars down there. I mean, it could be a really, really cool event. He happens to live there, Oscar, so he's tied in with the city council. I think he's ran it by the guys. And so I said, dude, that's awesome. Selfishly, I love it because I'm 10 minutes away from my crib. But I think that'd be a fun event. You like that?
Yes, and I'm also hearing that maybe Ray Vargas, the WBC 122-pound title list, he might be the co-feature on that particular night.
Okay.
Fight preview. Schedule and time your DVRs Friday night on ShowBox. My good friends at Thompson Boxing and Banner Promotions. Some really good prospects on the card. Ruben Villa takes on Luis Alberto Lopez. And also lightweight prospect Michael Dutchover and Sal Sanchez. They round out this card. And I will be here, Tucson, Arizona, on the worldwide leader, ESPN.
Ooh, bear down.
As Don King would say, revenge the rematches. And very good Arizona Wildcat reference there. He snuck that one in.
Thank you. Revenge or rematches.
Yeah.
I love that card. I was there.
April of 1994.
Yes,
that's the night that
Terry Norris, Chavez. That was great.
Well, Chavez got bailed out by Flip Pomansky. But anyway, we'll get to that later. Miguel Burchell, Francisco Vargas. The last time they fought in January of 2017, it looked to me like Vargas, who had had a string of wars, looked like a worn-down fighter.
Yeah,
and to me, all the momentum here is with Burchell.
I know. Unfortunately, it's sort of like Game of Thrones. which we'll get to, of course, later on. After so many battles, after the battle with the Night King and the Dead Army, you need to take a break. You can't go back-to-back battles and expect to be victorious. And as impressive as that was and his run was, I think it's taken its toll and might have shortened his career.
Yeah, the fight with the Japanese guy, where he looked like the Terminator at the very end. And the one thing that I remember about that fight, and I guess it's an optical illusion, as that fight was going on, the first half was relatively close, but going into round 6, 7, 8, 9, and then it looked like one guy was getting bigger physically, and it looked like Vargas was shrinking. Like there wasn't a lot left in the gas tank. Also, another rematch. Isaac Is My Dog Bay takes on Isaac Navarrete. Back in December, this Mexican came out of nowhere and shocked and dominated Dog Bay, who had been on a run. Here's the thing. I've been hearing that Dog Bay's having a much better camp, taking it much more seriously, higher quality sparring. Now, you know what he needs? To grow 5 inches. Still short. That is a tough matchup, regardless.
He can't do anything about that, but it is. I'm looking forward to the Battle of the Isaacs.
Also, on this card, Fox, PBC from Fairfax, Virginia, one of my favorite fighters, Jared Thundering Hurd, takes on Julian J. Rock Williams. Good fight. Solid fight.
That is a good fight, and he's always entertaining.
So now we move on to the Ask Mario segment of the program, where you, on Twitter, get to ask Mr. Lopez some questions. Let me punch them up here. Our first query comes from Brendan from Champaign, Illinois, home of the Fighting Illini. And why I reference that is, hey, Mario, back on Pacific Blue, part of your vast resume, when Kendall Gill was on an episode who recently did a very good job on the World Boxing Super Series broadcast, did you guys chat boxing at all?
Wow. That's a good callback.
Because he actually fought a little bit, too. Got into boxing.
That's right. I think we did. That was a long time ago. And as Nichols knows, I have an awful memory, but I do remember Kendall Gill.
Old school Charlotte Hornet.
Yeah. That's right. Old school.
Oh,
Charlotte
him and Larry
Hornet.
Johnson were great.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
Dale,
I think we did.
Father of the 2-time MVP.
That's right.
You know, the Kendall Gill's on one of the best college basketball teams that never won it. It was the '89 Flying Illini. They had Lowell Hamilton, Kenny Battle, Marcus
Damn,
Liberty,
you're the only one that would
and
know
Stephen
that
Barter.
case.
Yeah, they lost in the Final Four to Michigan. The year that Michigan won it with Rumeal Robinson.
Right.
And it was funny. Last week, I'm watching the Regis Prograis Donaire fight, and all of a sudden I'm hearing this voice. I was like, oh, this must be a former fighter. He's pretty good. I wonder who he is. And it sounds like an African-American guy.
Kendall
and
Gill.
Baby Ray Flores is the announcer, good friend of mine. I said, who's that other guy? He's pretty good. And the guy goes, well, you know Kendall. Kendall Gill.
How random.
And I gotta
That's
tell you,
cool.
Did a nice job.
Did a good job.
Did a very nice job.
Well, as opposed to a lot of the comments on Twitter over the announcers for DAZN, poor Brian Kenny and Sergio Mora were taking a beating right there. I don't know if it was fair or warranted, but
we'll talk about that a little bit later. Here's one from John Hitman Herndon with the 1-2 punch.
Thomas Hitman, the original, was at the fight.
Yes,
Just, I don't know if you saw him. He was there.
How good is Regis Prograis, and is he a potential opponent down the line for Terrence Crawford?
Ooh, I like him a lot. Terrence Crawford, now you're talking about the top of the food chain right there, the best in the business. That's a tall order and a big ask. Definitely not at this point in his career. I don't even know if in the future, to be honest, because he's smaller, but it could be. Hey, listen, if he continues on the trend he's on, possibly, but I do like him a lot, and I think he's a real deal.
Yes, very good fighter. If he beats Josh Taylor or Baranchik, who fight on May 18th.
Which aren't easy fights.
He makes certainly a strong case for being the best 140-pounder in the world. And yes, I do believe one day he will be a player at 147. Then John comes back as, what is the best fight that can be realistically made? I am over Wilder versus AJ and Spence versus Crawford. I was thinking about this, Mari. I would say the scrum at 175, where Top Rank has 3 of the 4 champions and Gilberto Ramirez. I think that's the most realistic.
That's probably one of my favorite weight classes right now. A lot of fun fights you can mix and match. Let's do a fantasy fight for a second. That was sort of out and about online right now. The possibility of Spence jumping up to middleweight, which is not far-fetched. And would him and the Canelo fight potentially be the biggest fight
yes,
in boxing?
Be one of them. And Errol Spence was out there this past weekend.
Yeah, he was at this past weekend.
He was really enjoying Cinco de Mayo, by the way.
I'm sure he
was. But with that said, I think size matters.
Well, he's a big kid.
So is Canelo, though. He's the natural middleweight in this fight.
No, right, but Spence is not a. So I don't know. He squeezes him
yeah.
down.
Spence is at least a junior middleweight.
It's not, but
to
it's
happen.
not like where you seeing Mikey Garcia going
Right,
up to
it's a
fight
little bit
Spence.
different.
No, he's a big. As a matter of fact, I think Spence is taller than
Yeah.
Canelo, and he's a heavy-handed guy, southpaw. We know he's talented. Listen, if he grows into that, I don't know, a year from now or so, that'd be great for the sport. I'll say this.
Kim Stradamus is going to make a prediction.
You think it happens?
Kim Stradamus says.
I'm rooting for it.
Kim Stradamus says that if they fight at AT&T Stadium, they'll have at least 60 to 70,000. I think that's the fight
easy.
that
That's
Jerry
easy.
Jones has been waiting for.
Yes, but I think there's too much business to be had there, and they'd end up at T-Mobile.
Yeah,
which I'm fine with.
Brian Hiding. Guys, where does Canelo rank in your pound-for-pound list after Saturday? I believe there's a really good argument to have him number 1. You know what? Again, he's in the top 5. I don't know if you could put him over Lomachenko and Crawford based on just their overall dominance and skill level. I don't.
Lomachenko, Crawford, Usyk, and then Canelo.
And Inoue, the Japanese monster.
I might have to put him above Inoue just off of his opponents. Dude, he went back-to-back Golovkin, then Jacobs. Yeah, I think he's got to go there. Top 3 or 4 for sure.
And here's a question from Wholesome Sancho. Asks, what does he want to see from Alexander Usyk, who also belongs in that elite area?
Well, no, we just mentioned him.
Right.
Yeah.
What are you expecting from him in his heavyweight debut?
I mean, I think you are who you are, right? I'm interested to see if he's going to be able to bring the power, but as far as his technician and the boxer, it's as good as they come.
Right, and here's one from Brad White. Has a former boxer looked or sounded better at age 62 than Sugar Ray Leonard? Mario, he's you. He's the boxing version of you.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said. Thank you so much.
Thank
yeah,
you.
my man is looking good. It looks like he can still fight for the title. Yes. He actually has fights coming up for his charity.
Yeah.
I believe Golden Boy's promoting him too, like in a week or two. I'm going to try to check it out if I'm around. But yeah, and a heck of a nice guy.
Yeah, and by the way, he still works out. Still hits the heavy bag.
Great, man.
Still
he
works
was in
out.
here not too long ago too, right?
He's been a couple times. I'd say a year ago maybe.
Yeah. He's been in here a couple times. Yeah.
All right, so now we go to Final Flurries. Mario, you are the Game of Thrones expert. Your thoughts on the most recent episode? Kind of tense, not a lot of action, but that ending scene was tense,
Well,
man.
first of all, I like let's rewind when they had everybody was getting hammered and hooking up. Where did all these women come from? Living in the north, you don't see women. All of a sudden, these women wanting to hook up. I was like, all right. But I love the relationship between, or it was not really a relationship, but the dynamic, I should say, between Sansa Stark and Khaleesi.
A lot of tension.
A lot of tension right there. How about when Jon Snow says, hey, look, let me tell you this truth. Swear not to say anything. I swear. All of a sudden, telling him that he's hooking up and banging his aunt. And then they're like...
Unknowingly, though.
Yeah, no. He knew afterwards. He knew. And she was still cool with it, by the way. She's like, just don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Well, in the Targaryens, it's cool. Remember, that's how they kept the preserve the bloodline. They preserve the bloodline. But then Sansa goes and tells everyone, telling everyone. And Tyrion, by the way, as your hand, I would have fired as the last.
Why?
Because he's not giving good advice. I love the scenes too with Varys and Tyrion, the two advisors. Those are great scenes.
No, they are
witty. But dude, they killed one of the dragons again. And why was she flying towards those harpoons?
Well, the thing was, they had the anti-dragon machinery.
I don't know if that dragon is going to be as
whoever the Pentagon
Drogon.
is for those people, man, those arrows were cutting right through the boats. I'm like, boy, those like Scud missiles, man.
Well, do you know when she said Dracarys, right before she got, you know what that means, right?
No.
That's what Khaleesi tells her dragons to breathe fire. So she was like telling him to bring the fire. Well, she got that one. She better watch her. She better bob and weave from those harpoons.
She was like doing Canelo.
She better in the future in the next one, but it's going to be a lot of violence coming up.
Did your heart drop when the head got cut off of Missy?
Oh, man.
Poor Missy lost her head.
She did lose her head.
Literally.
I would at least try to grab Cersei and take her down with me.
What's up with the Starbucks cup?
The Starbucks cup, that's right.
Yeah.
I would never notice that, by the way. That's it's a long day on set.
Can't they CGI that out of there? Put like a little chalice or something?
Leave it to the internet to get out there. But you know what? Another thing that I was thinking about right there. Sansa was saying, well, there could be another ruler. I'm really curious as how they're going to approach these final battles and who's going to end up on the Iron Throne, because Will Khaleesi end up turning on Jon Snow, who she loves, because of a request for power? Will Sansa? Because remember Sansa, and she sent Arya Stark when the Hound is she? Are they going to go over there and sort of covert operation, sneak in and try to get? I'm curious as to what. I think there's going to be some backstabbing.
Now hold
going
on. Now did Jaime smash and run on Big Bree?
Yeah, dude. And then he finally hooks up on her.
Rude. That is so rude.
And that was the first time she was a virgin. He dipped out.
Has chivalry died? There's no
That
chivalry.
was cold as ice. He's like, by the way, didn't see that coming. Didn't see that coming. And all for his sister, so he can go back to. It's such an incestuous show.
But that face-off, that exchange between little Ty and Cersei, ooh, that was tense. That was good.
Oh, the brother and sister,
I thought that was good.
How'd that work out for him? She ended up getting. I'm telling you, he's an awful advisor. I would have fired him.
Missy's head was coming off. They took her for a reason.
She should at least try to grab Cersei. Go down. Come on, take one for the team.
I felt so bad for that one guy who was in love with her.
Oh, yeah, the little Grey Worm.
Grey Worm.
Grey Worm couldn't satisfy her. Grey Worm.
Oh, that is true. He's a little missing. Oh, by the way, you worked yesterday. Daytime Emmys, right?
It went well. I hosted
busy
that.
Weekend for you.
It was a bit. Oh man, coming from Vegas and doing that, I was concerned about Nico.
Hey, Nico did a hell of a job.
He delivered, but that was stressful because he was 5 years old, and who knows, right? And they put him at the end, towards the end of the show.
Yeah, but when you have it, you have it,
right? And then so the Lopez's, team effort right there.
I gotta tell you, Masa's talent really just shines through in Nico.
It's all them. It's all
anyway,
them.
something that's on my DVR that I cannot wait to just view, and I'm a connoisseur of 30 for 30.
Love the 30 for 30s.
The one on Felipe Lopez. And I remember him.
Dude, I remember him. I was excited just because he had like a Latin name, and I was in basketball, and he was the biggest thing. And
New York City legend.
Dominican kid, right?
Yes, he was. Made the cover of Sports Illustrated before
that.
even playing the first game at St. John's. Now, in high school, he was such a great athlete that he didn't have to shoot a lot.
Yeah, he
everything
just
was
left
dunks,
through the building,
layups, finishes. He could drive.
Right.
Problem was, and I remember watching some of his games, you always thought, if he ever got a jumper, never developed a shot. And
but
so
he hung around the league for a minute.
He was a journeyman. He was the type of guy that'd come off the bench, but he was a shooting guard that couldn't shoot. See, those guys have a little bit of an issue. If you're a shooting guard, you better be able to shoot. And I think he hung around 6-7 years and played for about 4 or 5 teams.
Was he good with his money? Do we know?
We're gonna find.
We're gonna find out.
Watched it
That's
yet.
why we watch the shows.
Yes, but that's a great one. And he was such a big deal that A-Rod, when he was a major league star, actually went to a St. John's hotel during a game. Said, "Can I meet Felipe?" I mean, A-Rod was
fellow
doing
Dominican.
That. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
It's like that guy must have had some juice back then.
Yeah. Well, you support your own.
So anyway, a lot of things going on in the world of boxing. And Mari, I understand that your personal idol, you're wearing his shirt, Julio Cesar Chavez, in Vegas, our guy Tino, linked up with his people. And his people talked to our people. JC Superstar.
The senior.
The line of Coolio. There's only one JC Superstar. The line of Coolio.
By the way, the junior's coming in looking like Tony Montana and a young John Travolta. I said looking.
Yeah.
He's got a dope look. Though my kid's coming. I love how he has that 70s vibe to him.
I just don't know if we could have him in studio. You'd be in such awe. I don't know if
about Senior. Senior's cool, man. I was hanging out with Senior, and he was giving me tips. So I got I got a picture of my dog, who's Julio Cesar Chavez Lopez, with Julio Cesar Chavez holding him. That's a dope ass picture.
Yeah, and
by the way, I'm getting another dog.
You are.
That's right, and I got to name him the fighter. But we already
which one?
Oscar.
Though?
We got to go Oscar because he already told me.
What?
Oh, that's cold as ice. My kids, I left it up to the kids. Which names do you like? Because I've had Julio, and then I had Juan Manuel Marquez, or Juanita, because it was a girl, right? And now he's my homie, and he's Mexicano too. So quit giving me that look. That's cold as ice. Oscar's a great name for the dog too.
Yeah.
I left it up to my kids. I said, I did Ricardo because I did Ricardo Lopez too.
I like that.
And then they said, they ended up going with Oscar.
Nothing for Sal Sanchez. How about
no,
that?
I did. Yeah, I did.
You
Sal.
did?
Yeah,
oh,
I did.
okay.
I threw it out there. They're too long. Ricardo, Salvador, they're too long.
Okay. And by the way, see this great.
So come on, a French bulldog named Oscar.
I like that.
Right.
I'd probably piss all over your house. But anyway, hey, I'm just saying. Anyway, see this great sweater?
Cold as ice.
Well, call me the iceberg, Kim, not Slim. See this great sweater I'm wearing, folks, right here? The 3 Knockdown Rule. You could purchase this and the mug, and among other things.
Good
great
quality too.
You could sleep in these things.
Yeah.
People get we're getting a lot of compliments on this type of stuff.
Look good.
So go to the 3knockdownrule.com.
We
get
got
all
some for
the
the
stuff.
ladies too.
Yes, we do. We take care of everybody. So, all right, well, that's it for this week's edition of the 3 Knockdown Rule on behalf of Mario Lopez and Justin Buffalo Nichols. This is Steve Kim saying goodbye, everybody.